The police station was buzzing with routine chaos. Phones rang non-stop, hurried voices cut through the air, and footsteps echoed through the hallways. It was just another normal day for the police officers who dealt with incidents of all kinds. But what no one knew was that that day would be etched in everyone's memory. Suddenly, the front door was flung open, drawing everyone's attention. A thin boy, with shabby clothes and a visibly nervous look, walked in slowly. He didn't look more than 10 years old. For a moment, the room seemed to pause, as if even the phones had stopped ringing. The police officers exchanged puzzled glances. An experienced police officer, Leticia, a mother of 2 children, was the first to react. She stood up calmly but with firm steps and approached the boy. She bent down slightly to be at his height, trying to calm the atmosphere. "Hi, my dear. Are you okay?" she asked, with a gentle smile. "Are you lost?" The boy, hesitant at first, looked away, as if pondering what he was going to say. Then, with a low, trembling voice, he answered, "No, miss. I came alone." Leticia frowned, even more intrigued. "Alone?" she repeated, trying to understand. "But what are you doing here? Are you looking for someone?" The boy seemed to struggle with the words, fidgeting with his hands nervously, until he finally looked up to look at her and said something that made the entire room go silent. "I want to be arrested." The police station froze. Some police officers, who until then had been pretending not to hear the conversation, stopped everything they were doing and looked directly at the boy. Leticia needed a few seconds to process. "Arrested?" she asked, visibly surprised. "Why would you say something like that?" The boy swallowed hard, clearly nervous. His lips trembled before answering. "Because I did something wrong." His voice was barely audible, but the weight of the words was undeniable. Leticia leaned forward slightly, crossing her arms as she looked at the boy, with a mixture of skepticism and curiosity. "What did you do that was so wrong?" The boy hesitated again, looking away. Then, with trembling hands, he reached into his pocket and took out a small object. When he opened his palm, everyone in the police station held their breath. In his hand was a shiny necklace, encrusted with shiny stones. Silence filled the room. Leticia stared at the object for a few seconds, almost in disbelief. It was obvious that that necklace had a significant value, too expensive to be in the hands of a boy in worn-out clothes. "What is this?" she asked, carefully picking up the necklace. "The necklace I stole," the boy answered in a whisper. And it was at that moment that the chaos in the police station completely changed tone. How had that boy managed to steal something so valuable? What was the story behind that shiny object? The weight of the boy's words hung in the air, leaving everyone in the police station in absolute silence. Leticia stared at the necklace encrusted with shiny stones in her hands as she tried to assimilate the situation. The boy, with his shoulders slumped and his head down, seemed so small and fragile that the idea of him having committed a robbery seemed absurd. Leticia looked up at him, trying to keep her voice firm but gentle. "Are you telling me you stole this?" she asked, showing the necklace. The boy nodded slowly, still unable to look her directly in the eye. "Where did you get this?" Leticia insisted, leaning in slightly. He hesitated for a few seconds before answering, his voice breaking. "I took it. I took it from Mrs. Jessica's house." The name made an immediate impact. Leticia knew the name Jessica Martins, a famous socialite in the city, known for her fortune and valuable jewelry. She frowned, trying to hide her disbelief. "You went into her house?" he asked, now in a more serious tone. "How did you manage to do that?" The boy began to stutter, his trembling hands trying to hide his nervousness. I just came in. The door was open, I think." Letitia narrowed her eyes, analyzing every detail. The boy looked terrified, as if he were ready to run or cry. It was hard to imagine how he, with his fragile appearance, could have done something so bold. "Listen, boy," Letitia began, crossing her arms. "It's not good to lie to the police. We're busy solving important cases. If you're joking around, you could end up in serious trouble." The boy took a step back, looking even more nervous. But then, as if deciding he had nothing left to lose, he spoke in a firm yet shaky voice. "I'm not lying. I stole, and I'm here to pay for what I did." The conviction in his voice was disconcerting. Letitia took a deep breath, assessing the situation. It didn't make sense. Nothing in that story made sense. She looked again at the necklace, which shone brightly under the cold light of the police station. "Okay, stay here," Letitia said, turning to her colleagues. Walking over to a group of police officers, she placed the necklace on the table, drawing their attention. "I need help with this," she announced. Sergeant Almeida picked up the necklace, frowning as he examined it. "This looks expensive," he muttered, turning it over between his fingers. "Where did it come from?" "The kid said he stole it from Jessica Martin's house," Letitia replied, crossing her arms. "I thought it was just childish talk, but look at this." Almeida sighed, sitting down in front of the computer. "I'll check the system. If it's legitimate, there should be a complaint filed." As he typed, other officers approached, curious. The screen began to load the results, and Almeida let out a low whistle. "Here it is," he said, turning the screen so that everyone could see. "A complaint filed 3 days ago. A valuable necklace disappeared from Jessica Martin's house, valued at almost 400,000 reais." Letitia blinked, surprised. Maya milhão de reais. What was such a young boy doing with something so valuable? "How did that necklace end up in his hands?" asked one of the police officers, breaking the silence. Letitia took a deep breath, feeling a knot in her stomach. Something about that situation seemed wrong, very wrong. "I'll talk to him again," she said, returning to where the boy was. The boy was still standing in the same place, his eyes downcast and his body shaking slightly. Letitia bent down once more to be at his height, trying to appear calm. "What's your name, boy?" she asked softly. "Uriel," he replied without raising his head. "Uriel, how old are you?" 12. Letitia arched an eyebrow. He looked younger, perhaps because of his thinness and fragility. "Right, Uriel," Letitia said, choosing her words carefully. "I need you to tell me everything from the beginning. How did you get that necklace?" Uriel hesitated again, his gaze lost on the ground. He seemed to want to speak, but something was stopping him. Before he could say anything, Letitia noticed something strange. His hands were shaking more than before, and his skin was pale. Too pale. "Are you okay?" she asked, leaning closer. Uriel nodded slowly, but couldn't say anything else. His lips trembled as if he were trying to speak, but before Letitia could insist, his body gave out. He fainted, falling to the floor of the police station. "Hey, Uriel!" Letitia exclaimed, catching him before he could fall completely. "I need help here," he shouted, attracting the attention of the other police officers. 2 colleagues ran towards her, helping her to put the boy in a chair. "He needs a doctor now," Letitia said, the urgency evident in her voice. A few minutes later, a police car was speeding through the city streets towards the hospital, with Uriel unconscious in the back seat. What was happening to that boy? And what else was hidden in that story? The necklace was just the beginning of a much bigger mystery. But what was the secret Uriel was keeping? The police car arrived at the hospital at high speed. with Leticia looking worriedly at the unconscious boy in the back seat. As soon as they parked, the medical team greeted them promptly, placing Uriel on a stretcher and taking him to the emergency room. Leticia walked next to the stretcher while the doctors asked quick questions. "Is he your son?" asked a doctor, without taking his eyes off Uriel. He was brought in by the police. "We don't know much about him, only that he suddenly fainted at the police station," Leticia explained, trying to stay focused. "Did he have a fever or show any symptoms before that?" Leticia shook her head, frustrated. "He looked pale and shaking, but I'm not sure. He's a boy. Maybe he's malnourished. We don't know who his parents are." The doctor nodded, already examining the boy. "We're going to run some tests. We'll try to stabilize him before going ahead with a diagnosis." As the emergency room door closed, Leticia stood there for a moment, staring into space. Something about that story didn't make sense. Her concern for the boy was obvious, but there was also the mystery of the necklace. How did he get something so valuable? She took a deep breath, picked up her cell phone, and called the police station. "Almeida, any news about the necklace?" she asked urgently. On the other end of the line, Almeida answered quickly. "Yes, Leticia. We've already confirmed that the necklace belongs to Jessica Martins. She was informed and is on her way here. It seems that the object is authentic, valued at almost 500,000 reais." Leticia frowned. "Right. What about the boy? Have we gotten any information about his parents or guardians?" "Nothing yet. He had no documents with him, and no one filed a police report about a missing boy. We're trying to track something down." Leticia sighed. "Keep looking. I'm going to stay at the hospital and try to understand more about him. Let me know if you find anything." Hanging up the phone, Leticia paced back and forth in the waiting room, restless. She wasn't sure why, but she felt like this case was more complex than it seemed. A few minutes later, the emergency room doors opened, and the doctor who was with Uriel appeared. He took off his disposable gloves and walked towards Leticia. "He's stabilized for now, but still unconscious. We've done initial tests, and we already have some suspicions. The boy seems to be extremely malnourished and showing signs of severe anemia. We need more medical information to confirm the full picture." Leticia nodded, thanking the doctor, but she couldn't help but feel growing worried. Meanwhile, back at the police station, the arrival of Jessica Martins brought a new element to the case. The woman with an elegant bearing and determined gaze seemed more curious than irritated. "Did you find my necklace?" he asked, entering the room where Almeida was. "Yes, Mrs. Jessica." Almeida pointed to the object carefully stored in a plastic bag. "Is this the necklace?" Jessica took the bag and examined the necklace carefully. "Yes, it is," she stated with conviction. "We need some information, Mrs. Jessica," Almeida said. "The boy who brought this necklace to the police station said he stole it from your house. Have you had any recent contact with a child?" Jessica seemed surprised, frowning. "A child? No, not that I remember. He mentioned that he was at your house. Maybe he entered without being noticed?" Jessica thought for a moment, and then her eyes lit up, as if something had occurred to her. "Well, now that you mention it," she began. 3 days ago, I saw a boy in my garden." Almeida immediately began taking notes. "Can you tell us more about it?" "Of course. It was morning and I was in the garden of my property. My security guards noticed something strange. A tree was swaying a lot, as if someone was climbing it. When they went to check it out, they found a skinny boy high up in the tree picking oranges." Almeida exchanged glances with another officer, interested in the story. And what happened next? I asked the security guards not to scare him. He seemed terrified, as if he was waiting to be punished. I talked to him and found out that he was hungry. I invited him in, asked them to prepare something for him to eat. Then he went to the bathroom and came back out. I thought he was just a hungry child. I never imagined he could be involved in the robbery. Almeida sighed deeply. You mentioned that the necklace disappeared 3 days ago. Do you know where it was kept? Yes, in a locked drawer in my room. She hesitated. But now that I think about it, I might have left the drawer open by mistake. Almeida nodded, writing down the details. Thank you for the information, Miss Jessica. It helps us connect the pieces. Back at the hospital, Leticia felt her cell phone vibrate in her pocket. She answered it quickly and heard Almeida on the other end. Leticia, we have more information. It seems that the boy really was at Jessica Martin's house. He was fed by her, but he must have seen the necklace and taken advantage of the moment to take it. Leticia felt the weight of the words as she looked at the doors of the emergency room, where Uriel was still being treated. Something in that story seemed missing, but one thing was certain. The mystery was far from over. Why did Uriel take the necklace? What was he hiding? And what else could that story reveal? Leticia waited anxiously in the hospital hallway, her thoughts spinning nonstop. The mystery of the necklace, Uriel's condition, Jessica's arrival. Everything seemed connected, but there were still many gaps in the story. She knew she needed answers and that they would come, but she didn't expect what would happen next. The doctor who was treating Uriel left the emergency room and walked towards Leticia. He was carrying a clipboard, his expression serious and his posture typical of someone delivering sensitive news. Officer, can I speak to you for a moment? He said in a serious tone. Leticia stood up immediately. Of course, doctor. How is he? We managed to stabilize him. The fainting was caused by a combination of severe malnutrition and severe anemia. But that's only part of the problem. He paused, as if choosing his words carefully. The tests indicated something more worrying. Leticia held her breath. What do you mean? The boy has leukemia. That's why he's so pale, weak, and debilitated. We suspect it's an advanced case, but we'll need more tests to confirm the stage of the disease. For a moment, Leticia couldn't say anything. The doctor's words seemed to echo in her mind. Leukemia. The boy was sick, and he probably didn't even know it. That explains a lot, she murmured. The doctor nodded. He needs immediate treatment, but that involves considerable costs and intensive care. We know he's a minor, so we need to contact his parents or guardians to authorize any procedure. Leticia frowned. We still don't know who his parents are. We're trying to find out, but he hasn't brought any documents or information that could help us. The doctor took a deep breath, looking frustrated but understanding. We'll do our best to take care of him in the meantime. If you find out anything, please let me know immediately. I will, Leticia promised. As soon as the doctor walked away, Leticia picked up her cell phone and called the police station. Almeida answered quickly. Any news about the boy's parents? Leticia asked, her voice full of urgency. We still don't have anything concrete. We're checking police reports and records, but so far, nothing that leads us directly to his parents. Leticia sighed, her frustration evident. Okay, keep looking. I'll go back to the hospital and stay with him. But before she could hang up, Almeida added, Mrs. Jessica has already arrived at the police station. We're explaining the situation. She seems more curious than irritated. Great. I want to talk to her as soon as I'm done here. Keep me informed. Leticia hung up and looked back at the emergency room doors. Something about this story seemed more complicated than just a robbery out of necessity. There was something bigger, something she couldn't yet see. Sometime later, while she was waiting for news about Uriel, Leticia received another call. This time, it was from a colleague reporting that a couple had just come into the police station looking for their missing son. "The boy's name is Uriel," said the police officer on the other end of the line. Leticia felt her stomach turn. Finally, a clue about the boy's parents. "Okay, bring them here immediately. I'm at the hospital with him." Less than an hour later, a couple arrived at the hospital clearly distressed. The man, broad-shouldered and tired-looking, was holding tightly the hand of a woman in a wheelchair, whose expression was a mixture of anxiety and fear. Leticia approached them cautiously. "Good evening. My name is Leticia. Are you Uriel's parents?" The man nodded. "Yes. My name is Carlos, and this is my wife, Ana. He's our only son. He left home 2 days ago and hasn't come back. We're desperate." Leticia saw the genuine concern on their faces and decided not to waste time. "Uriel is here at the hospital. He fainted at the police station, and the doctors discovered that he's sick." Ana covered her mouth with her hands, her face already wet with tears. "Sick? My God! Is he okay?" "He's been stabilized, but the doctors detected a case of leukemia. He'll need intensive care." Carlos squeezed his eyes shut, as if trying to hold back tears. "My boy. He's just a child. How could this happen?" Leticia took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. "You can see him now. Come with me." She led them to the room where Uriel was. When they entered, they saw the boy lying on the bed, still pale and connected to some machines, but with his eyes open. "Mom, Dad," Uriel whispered when he saw them, his voice hoarse. Ana began to cry, stretching out her arms to him, while Carlos approached to hug him. "My boy, you made us so worried," Ana sobbed. "I'm so sorry," Uriel said, tears streaming down his face. Leticia watched the scene from afar, with a mixture of relief and concern. There were still unanswered questions, but at that moment, it was impossible not to be touched by the emotion of the reunion between father, mother, and son. Meanwhile, at the police station, Jessica was about to find out more details about the boy who had stolen her jewel, but who seemed to be just another victim of devastating circumstances. Why did Uriel risk so much by stealing the necklace? What would be Jessica and Leticia's next step in this story full of revelations? At the police station, the tension in the air was evident. Jessica Martins, with her elegant posture, sat in front of Almeida and other police officers, processing the information she had just received about the necklace and the boy who had stolen it. She could not understand how someone so young could be involved in something like this. "Miss Jessica," Almeida began, with a professional but gentle tone, "the boy who brought the necklace to the police station is in a complicated situation. He confessed to the theft, but from what we know so far, the circumstances in which it happened are atypical." Jessica frowned, clearly intrigued. "The police mentioned that he was at my house. What kind of circumstances are we talking about?" Almeida took a deep breath, deep before answering. "He said he entered your house and saw the drawer where the necklace was kept open. That's when he took the necklace. But besides that, we know that he is seriously ill and that his family is facing extreme poverty." Jessica seemed surprised by this last piece of information. "Sick? What do you mean?" He was taken to the hospital after fainting here at the police station. The doctors discovered that he has leukemia. It seems that the boy didn't know that, and maybe neither did his parents." Jessica leaned forward, her expression visibly affected. "My God, she murmured. I had no idea it was something so serious. There's one more thing, Almeida continued. He mentioned that he was in your garden before. It seems that day you had a brief contact. Jessica narrowed her eyes, trying to remember. Then slowly she nodded. Yes, now it makes sense. 3 days ago, my security guards found a boy in the tree in the garden, picking oranges. He looked scared, fragile. I thought he was just a hungry child. Almeida remained silent, giving her space to continue. I asked my security guards to leave him alone. I invited him in, prepared something for him to eat. He was so nervous, so vulnerable. After eating, he asked to use the bathroom. That was it. And the necklace? Almeida asked cautiously. I never imagined he would have seen or taken anything. Jessica paused, her gaze distant. But now that I think about it, he might have noticed the necklace when he passed by the hallway. The drawer where I keep my jewelry might have been open. It was my mistake. Almeida nodded, understanding. It seems he acted on impulse. As far as we know, he returned the necklace because he regretted what he did. Jessica folded her hands in her lap, her eyes fixed on the floor. I can't feel angry with him. If he's sick and in such poor condition, maybe he acted out of desperation. Almeida looked at her with interest. Miss Jessica, do you want to press charges against him? She looked up at the police officer, her expression firm but compassionate. He's just a child. The last thing I want to do is make his situation worse. Almeida smiled slightly, pleased with her answer. Understood. I'll put on record that you don't want to pursue a formal complaint. Jessica nodded, but her mind seemed far away. I'd like to know more about him. Can I visit him at the hospital? Of course. I'll arrange for you to go there. Letitia was next to Uriel when Jessica arrived at the hospital, accompanied by Almeida. As soon as he saw the woman enter the room, Uriel's eyes widened, clearly nervous. Miss Jessica? He asked, his voice weak. Jessica approached slowly with a gentle smile. Hi, Uriel. I heard everything. The boy lowered his eyes, his face full of shame. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done that. Jessica put her hand on his shoulder, a surprisingly warm gesture. You don't need to apologize. I know you were going through a hard time. Uriel began to cry, sobbing softly. I just wanted to help my mom and dad. They're always hungry. I thought that if I sold the necklace, I could buy them food. But when I looked at the necklace, I knew it was wrong. Jessica took a deep breath, holding back the tears that threatened to fall. You're very brave, Uriel, and very good. Don't worry about the necklace. The most important thing right now is for you to be well and take care of your health. Jessica's presence seemed to bring some relief to the boy. But the story wasn't completely over yet. Letitia, who was watching the interaction, knew that the next step would be to figure out how to help Uriel's family overcome the challenges they faced. What will Jessica do next? How will Uriel's illness change his life and that of his family? Jessica left Uriel's room deeply shaken. What had started as a robbery incident now seemed much more. A story of despair, illness, and a family struggling with the weight of an unforgiving reality. Letitia followed her into the hallway, where Carlos and Ana waited, anxious for news. Mrs. Jessica, we really appreciate your understanding. Carlos began hesitantly, his eyes fixed on the floor. We know what our son did was wrong. There is no excuse, but thank you for not pressing charges. Jessica shook her head, her voice firm but full of emotion. There is nothing to thank you for. You are going through much more than I imagined. Ana, with tears in her eyes, finally spoke. It is so difficult. We do not know how we managed to get here. Carlos lost his job months ago, and my condition prevents me from working. We live off the little we receive and always try to leave food for Uriel. But he noticed that we were starving. Jessica took a deep breath, trying to maintain her composure. And that's why he took the necklace? Anna nodded, tears streaming freely. He thought that if he sold the necklace, he could buy us food. And he thought that if he got arrested, it would be one less mouth to feed. Those words hit Jessica like a punch in the gut. She looked at Letitia, who just nodded, as if confirming the gravity of the situation. "I want to help you," Jessica said finally, her voice firm. Carlos and Anna exchanged incredulous looks. "Miss Jessica, you've already done so much. By not pressing charges, we can't accept anything else." "You don't have a choice," Jessica interrupted. "This boy is special. He did something wrong, but his heart was in the right place. And now he needs help. You need help." Carlos tried to argue, but Jessica held up her hand, indicating that she wasn't open to arguing. "I'll pay for his treatment. I'll make sure he has everything he needs to fight this disease. And I will help you get back on your feet," Anna sobbed, covering her face with her hands. "We don't know how to thank you." Jessica put her hand on her shoulder. "You don't need to thank me. Just take care of him." A few days later, Letitia officially closed Uriel's case. The necklace had been returned. The owner did not want to press charges, and the investigation did not need to move forward. However, the story continued to resonate. Jessica made a point of using her influence to mobilize help for Uriel's family. She contacted doctors, social workers, and even business people who could offer jobs for Carlos and Anna. The media, which had initially reported the theft of $1 million jewel, now highlighted the story of solidarity and overcoming. Weeks later, Uriel's family's life began to change. Carlos got a job as a driver for a large company, and Anna started working at an organization focused on the inclusion of people with disabilities. Meanwhile, Uriel began his treatment with Jessica's financial support. Despite being a long and exhausting process, he showed surprising strength. Months later, Letitia was at the police station filling out reports when she heard a familiar voice. "Officer Letitia." She looked up and saw Uriel coming through the door. With a healthy face, a wide smile, and a bag in his hands. "Uriel," she exclaimed, standing up to greet him. The boy approached and opened the bag, revealing several ripe oranges. "I brought these for you." Letitia arched her eyebrows, smiling. "Oranges? Where did you get these?" Uriel smiled mischievously. "I stole them from Mrs. Jessica's tree." Letitia feigned indignation, but soon began to laugh. "Starting again already?" "That's a lie," Uriel confessed, laughing. "She gave them to me. I went to her house yesterday. We were celebrating my recovery." Letitia's smile faded for a moment, replaced by pure emotion. "Are you cured?" "Yes. The doctors said I'm fine now." Letitia felt her eyes well up with tears. She bent down and hugged him tightly. "You're an incredible boy, Uriel. Never forget that." As Uriel left the police station with his parents, now smiling and with renewed hope, Letitia watched the scene, feeling a satisfaction that went beyond the fulfillment of her duty. Some stories have the power to transform lives, and sometimes empathy is the key to changing everything. How many times do we judge someone without knowing the story behind it? May this story remind us of the importance of empathy and the ability to reach out to others. And you, have you ever been surprised to discover the side of someone you judged? Tell us in the comments and share to inspire more people. Days passed, and the story of Uriel, his family, and Jessica's intervention continued to resonate in the community. It was no longer just about a robbery. Now, it was a story of overcoming hope and compassion. News reports began to explore the transformation of Uriel and his family's lives. Many criticized the situation that led such a young boy to steal. However, most mobilized in solidarity. Donations began to arrive to the family, from food and clothing to letters of encouragement. "It seems like the whole world is rooting for you now," Leticia said to Ana and Carlos during a visit to the hospital. Carlos smiled, still shy with so much attention, but grateful. "We don't know how to thank you for all this, officer. It all started with you listening to our son." Ana, next to him, nodded, holding Uriel's hand. "He's getting stronger every day." With the ongoing treatment and the support of the community, Uriel began to recover not only his health, but also the joy he had lost. He spent hours studying, playing, and dreaming about the future. During a hospital appointment, Jessica visited him, bringing educational books and games. "I want to see you grow up and enjoy life to the fullest, Uriel," she said, as he hugged her tightly. "I promise I won't to disappoint anyone." While Uriel recovered, Carlos and Ana also adapted to their new life. Carlos, now a driver for a large company, gained financial stability, while Ana worked at a local NGO, inspired to help others who faced similar challenges. "We never thought everything would change so quickly," Ana said, her eyes shining during a visit from Leticia. "You worked hard for this," Leticia replied. "Uriel took the first step, and you followed through with courage." Months later, Uriel was invited to speak at a school about his story. He was nervous, but Leticia and Jessica were there to support him. "I made a mistake," he began, facing the audience of students and parents. "But I learned that people can help us change. We should never be afraid to ask for help." The room burst into applause, and Jessica, who was in the audience, smiled proudly. After the event, Uriel went to Leticia. "Officer, thank you for never giving up on me, even when I made a mistake." Leticia smiled, placing her hand on his shoulder. "You don't need to thank me. You are proof that everyone deserves a second chance." As Uriel and his family moved on with their lives transformed, the story left a lasting message for all who heard it. To err is human, but to find people who believe in our redemption is a divine gift. May we be those people. And you? Have you ever given or received a second chance that changed your life? Share your story and inspire others to do the same. The story of Uriel and his family continued to resonate, not only in the local community, but also in larger circles. The case became a powerful example of how compassion and empathy can transform lives. Jessica, who was initially seen as just an aloof millionaire, began to be recognized as a figure of solidarity. She actively involved herself with the NGO, where Ana worked, helping to implement projects aimed at vulnerable children. "I never imagined that such an expensive necklace would lead me to something as valuable as helping people," she confided to Leticia in a conversation. Leticia smiled, agreeing. Sometimes, the greatest changes come from the most unexpected places. With his health recovering, Uriel returned to school and became an inspiration to his peers and teachers. He was invited to share his story at school and community events, always emphasizing the power of choices and the impact of support. "I thought I was alone, but I discovered that there are people who want to help, even when you think you don't deserve it," he said, with a sparkle in his eyes. One day, Uriel came home after school and found Carlos and Ana waiting for him with an envelope in their hands. "What is this?" he asked, curious. Ana smiled, tears shining in her eyes. "It's a scholarship. Mrs. Jessica got it for you." You can study whatever you want when you finish school." Uriel was speechless, hugging his parents tightly. "I promise I'll make it all worth it." Meanwhile, at the police station, Letitia often thought about the impact Uriel had made on her own life. She became an even more ardent advocate for empathy and support for at-risk children. At a meeting with her colleagues, she shared, "Uriel's case reminded me why I chose this profession. Sometimes it's not about arresting someone, but about understanding the pain behind the choices they make." Uriel's story inspired several local initiatives. Businesses began offering more opportunities for vulnerable families, while schools and churches organized fundraisers to support children like Uriel. Sometime later, Uriel, now with a flushed face and an infectious smile, decided to visit the police station to thank everyone. He brought a small cake, with the help of his parents, and handed it to Letitia. "This is for you. I know you did more than your job. You changed my life." Letitia laughed, moved, as the other officers applauded. "Uriel, you are proof that it is worth believing in people." As Uriel said goodbye, Letitia watched him leave with his family, now full of hope and determination. "Some cases never leave our memory," she murmured to Almeida, who was at her side. "And this is one of them," he replied with a smile. Stories like Uriel's show us that no one is beyond redemption. We need to listen, understand, and act. What about you? Have you ever been impacted by a story that changed the way you see the world? Share it in the comments and inspire others to do the same. The months passed, and Uriel, his family, and everyone involved in the story continued their transformed journeys. But the impact of the situation still echoed, especially in Uriel's life. On Uriel's birthday, Jessica decided to organize a small surprise party for him. The celebration took place in the garden of her house, the same place where the story of the necklace had begun. Ana and Carlos helped with the preparations, moved to see how circumstances had changed. The community also attended, neighbors, Uriel's teachers, and even some of the police officers who had been at the station that fateful day. Uriel entered the garden and was speechless when he saw the colorful decorations, the balloons, and the table full of food he never imagined having at his own party. "All this? Is it for me?" he asked, his eyes wide. Jessica smiled, placing a hand on his shoulder. "It's for you. Today we celebrate not only your birthday, but also your strength and courage." During the party, Uriel asked for everyone's attention. He stood on a small makeshift bench, holding a piece of paper with some words he had written. "I just want to say thank you." He swallowed hard, fighting back his emotion. "When I thought there was no more hope, you showed up. Everyone here did something for me and my family, even when I didn't deserve it." The respectful silence was broken by loud applause. Leticia, who was next to Almeida, felt her eyes well up. "You changed our lives, kid," she murmured, clapping her hands. After Uriel's speech, Jessica called Ana and Carlos for a private conversation. "I've been thinking a lot about your future," she began, her voice gentle but firm. "In addition to helping Uriel with his education, I want to make sure you have stability." Carlos, still having trouble accepting so much generosity, tried to refuse, but Jessica was emphatic. "You're not accepting charity. You're accepting an opportunity to start over. I want to open a foundation in Uriel's name to help other families in vulnerable situations. And you'll be the managers." Ana began to cry, covering her face with her hands, while Carlos shook his head, speechless. "We don't know how to thank you," he finally murmured. Jessica smiled. "Give thanks by helping others, just as you were helped." As time went by, Uriel became a symbol of resilience in the community. He dedicated himself to his studies with more determination than ever, already dreaming of the future he could build. "I want to be a doctor," he said once during a routine checkup. "I want to help children like me who need someone to believe in them." The doctor smiled, impressed by the boy's determination. "With your strength, Uriel, you can be anything you want." A year after the necklace was stolen, Jessica received an unexpected message. It was an invitation for Uriel and his family to participate in an event at the city hall. There, the city mayor would honor their story of overcoming difficulties as an example of social transformation. At the ceremony, Uriel was called to the stage to receive a commemorative plaque. He held the microphone and spoke with conviction. "It's not just about me or my family. It's about how the kindness of people can change everything. We can all do something for the people around us." The audience rose to their feet in applause, moved by the boy's words. In the front row, Leticia, Jessica, Anna, and Carlos looked at each other, proud of how life had given them all a new chance. Uriel's story teaches us that even in the most difficult moments, an act of compassion can create waves of transformation. What about you? Have you ever reached out to someone in need or received help from where you least expected it? Share your story and inspire others to do the same. The auditorium was silent, broken only by the thunderous applause that echoed after Uriel's speech. He, now 13 years old, was more confident, his eyes shining with emotion. His words not only touched the people in the audience, but also marked the end of an important chapter in his life. After the event, Uriel was surrounded by friends, supporters, and members of the community who had followed his journey since that fateful day at the police station. Anna and Carlos, visibly moved, could not hide their pride. "Snow, you make us proud, my son," Carlos said, hugging Uriel tightly. Anna added, her voice breaking, "Never doubt how special you are." Jessica, next to her, watched the scene with a satisfied smile. She knew that the impact that had begun with a simple gesture of empathy would now echo for generations. In the following weeks, the foundation created by Jessica in Uriel's name began to take shape. The goal was clear: to help vulnerable children, offering educational, psychological, and medical support. Carlos and Anna took on the role of managers with determination, while Uriel became the face of the initiative, participating in campaigns and encouraging other families to seek help. "This foundation is our legacy," Uriel said. "It is proof that even the most difficult situations can lead us to something bigger." At the police station, Leticia continued her routine as a police officer, but Uriel's case had left a deep mark on her. She began to get involved in social projects aimed at children and adolescents at risk, taking her experience and compassion beyond the walls of the police station. "This case taught me that the police are not only about enforcing the law, but also about protecting the most vulnerable," she explained in an interview with a local radio station. A few months later, Uriel showed up at the police station again, this time accompanied by his parents. He was carrying a small box in his hands, and Leticia, upon seeing him, smiled immediately. "What have you been up to now, boy?" she joked. Uriel laughed and handed her the box. "I didn't steal anything this time, I swear. It's a gift for you." Leticia opened the box and found a simple but meaningful keychain, a replica of a necklace with a small star-shaped pendant. "So, you'll never forget how much you changed my life," Uriel said, his eyes shining. Leticia held the keychain, touched by the gesture, and hugged the boy. "I will never forget, Uriel, and never stop believing in yourself." As Uriel and his family left the police station, Leticia watched, holding the foot keychain in her hand. She thought about how the boy's story had begun as an act of desperation and ended as an example of transformation. Uriel's story reminds us that empathy can be the spark that transforms lives. Every choice to help, listen, or believe in someone can create an impact that goes beyond what we imagine. What about you? Have you ever been inspired by a story that made you change the way you act? Share it in the comments and help spread this message of hope.